Governments have tried to ban it. China banned it twice. Then a third time for good measure. The IMF has called it a threat to financial stability. The SEC has spent years trying to regulate it into submission. Billionaires have called it a fraud. Warren Buffett called it rat poison. Jamie Dimon called it a pet rock. And yet Bitcoin is still here, still running, still producing a block every 10 minutes, exactly as designed. So if no government, no regulator, no bank, and no billionaire can stop it, who actually controls it? That question sounds simple. The answer is one of the most fascinating puzzles in the history of money. And by the end of this video, you'll understand why the real answer might be the most radical idea in modern finance. The core dilemma: who holds the keys? Here's the thing most people get wrong about Bitcoin. They assume that because someone built it, someone must control it. When Satoshi Nakamoto launched Bitcoin in January 2009, he handed the world a piece of software. Then, in 2010, he disappeared. No goodbye. No forwarding address. Just gone. Which left behind a fundamental question that has never been fully resolved. If no one owns Bitcoin, who decides what Bitcoin is? The answer isn't one person. It isn't one company. It isn't even one country. There are four distinct factions who each believe they hold the ultimate power over Bitcoin's future. And today, we're going to examine all four, because the battle between them is what actually keeps Bitcoin alive. Let's start with the people most people think are in charge. The Bitcoin Core developers. Bitcoin Core is the open source software that defines the network's most fundamental rules, the 21 million supply cap, how transactions are verified, how blocks are formed, how nodes communicate. Since 2009, hundreds of developers have contributed code to this repository. But the people who can actually merge changes into the master code base, the maintainers, have historically numbered between 5 and 8 at any given time. 5 to 8 people, maintaining the software that secures over $1 trillion in value. But here's what makes Bitcoin different from every other software project on Earth. These developers cannot force a single line of their code onto anyone. The way Bitcoin evolves is through a process called Bitcoin Improvement Proposals, BIPs. Any developer in the world can write a BIP, proposing a change to the protocol. It gets debated sometimes for years. It gets reviewed. It gets tested on secondary networks, the mining monopolies. On the other side of the power debate, you have the miners. And when you see a modern Bitcoin mining operation for the first time, it's hard to believe these people don't control everything. Bitcoin mining today is a multi-billion-dollar industrial operation. Warehouses the size of football fields filled with specialized ASIC machines, consuming as much electricity as small countries, running 24 hours a day. A small number of mining pools companies like Foundry USA, Antpool, and F2 Pool regularly control more than 50% of Bitcoin's total hash rate. In theory, that kind of concentration sounds alarming. Controlling 51% of hash rate would theoretically allow a miner to reorganize recent transactions, a so-called 51% attack. They could double spend coins. They could block certain transactions from confirming. But here's the brutal economic reality that keeps miners honest. That kind of attack would immediately destroy the value of the asset they've spent billions of dollars in hardware and electricity to mine. Miners are prisoners of their own investment. They need Bitcoin to have value. An attack on Bitcoin's integrity is an attack on their own bottom line. And beyond economics, miners still cannot change Bitcoin's rules. They cannot increase the supply cap. They cannot alter the transaction verification process. They can only choose which valid transactions to include in their blocks. Miners process Bitcoin. They don't define it. The historical climax, the 2017 block size war. To understand who really controls Bitcoin, you need to understand the most consequential battle in its history, the 2017 block size war. By 2016, Bitcoin was growing fast, and its blocks were filling up. Transactions were getting expensive. Confirmation times were slow. The network was showing its limits. The solution seemed obvious to a powerful coalition of miners, venture capital firms, and major exchanges. Increase the block size. More space per block means more transactions, lower fees, faster confirmations. This coalition, backed by massive hash rate and billions in funding, called themselves the big blockers. They had the miners, They had the money. They had the brand recognition. And then a group of ordinary people with Raspberry Pis said, no. The small blocker camp, mostly cypherpunks, individual node operators, and Bitcoin core developers, argued that larger blocks would make running a full node more expensive, gradually centralizing the network in the hands of large corporations. It would betray Bitcoin's foundational purpose. So they launched the user-activated soft fork. Node operators around the world coordinated to signal that on August 1st, 2017, they would only accept blocks following the new segregated witness rules, regardless of what miners did. The miners blinked. Unable to force their version of Bitcoin onto a network of node operators who simply refused to accept it, the big blockers forked off into Bitcoin Cash, a separate chain that followed their preferred rules. Block? It gets added to the chain. Invalid block one that, say, tried to print extra Bitcoin or change the supply cap gets rejected. Instantly, automatically, no phone calls, no committees, no appeals process. A rule-breaking block is simply ignored by every node on the network. Simultaneously, they have something more powerful, the ability to simply say no. There are currently over 15,000 publicly reachable Bitcoin full nodes running around the world, and that number doesn't include the thousands of private nodes that never announce themselves to the network. As long as that number stays distributed and geographically diverse, no government, no corporation, and no mining pool can unilaterally change what Bitcoin is. Economic, users, and exchanges. The fourth faction is the one most people never think about when they ask who controls Bitcoin. And in some ways, it's the most powerful of all. Economic users, the exchanges, the institutions, the ETF holders. The businesses that accept Bitcoin as payment represent the market consensus layer of Bitcoin's governance. Here's what that means in practice. Even if developers write beautiful code, even if miners agree to run it, even if nodes accept the new chain, if the market doesn't price the new version as the real Bitcoin, the upgrade effectively fails. We saw this play out in 2017 again. When Bitcoin Cash forked off, it had the support of some of the largest mining operations on Earth. Its proponents argued loudly that it was the true vision of Bitcoin. But Coinbase didn't list it immediately. Major institutional liquidity stayed on BTC. The ETF products that came years later were built on Bitcoin Core, not Bitcoin Cash. The market spoke. Beach never reached price parity with BTC. And today, Bitcoin Cash trades at a fraction of Bitcoin's value, a permanent monument to the limits of miner power without economic consensus. As institutional adoption has deepened, BlackRock's Bitcoin ETF, Fidelity's custody products, sovereign wealth fund exposure, the economic layer, has grown even more powerful as a stabilizing force. These institutions don't want protocol instability. They don't want controversial forks. They want predictability. And their collective liquidity enforces that preference more effectively than any regulatory body could. The developers who maintain it cannot impose their will. The miners who secure it cannot rewrite its rules. The exchanges that provide its liquidity cannot dictate its future. And the node operators who validate it cannot mine or trade on their own. Bitcoin is governed by structured conflict, by a system so carefully balanced that its stability emerges from the impossibility of any single party winning. Satoshi Nakamoto didn't just build a currency. He built a governance system for the digital age, one that treats the absence of leadership not as a bug, but as the most important feature. And 15 years later, despite every government that tried to ban it, every billionaire who called it worthless, every competitor that claimed to replace it, the blocks keep coming. Every 10 minutes. Like clockwork. Not because someone is in charge, because no one is. If this video changed how you think about Bitcoin or about power and governance in general, subscribe. We cover the ideas that matter in crypto with the depth they actually deserve. And if you want to go deeper, the 2017 block size war has an entire history worth exploring. We've linked a related video for you right now. Who controls Bitcoin? Now you know the real answer. And it's one of the most radical ideas in the history of money.